Max Harper was the kind of guy who could get lost in a revolving door. A travel blogger by trade, he prided himself on seeking out the oddest adventures, but deep down, he was also the guy who would hide under the bed during a horror movie. His friends loved to rib him about it. "Max, the only ghost you'll ever catch is the one in the fridge," they'd joke, referencing a suspiciously ancient leftover that had seen better days, but tonight was different. Tonight, under the glow of flickering fluorescent lights, Max stood at the edge of the train platform, a mix of excitement and trepidation bubbling in his chest. It was midnight, and the station buzzed with an unusual energy. A crowd of eccentric characters milled about, each more bizarre than the last. An old man was arguing passionately with a newspaper stand about the merits of a lost kitten, while a woman in a sequin dress flitted around, trying to catch the attention of a disinterested barista. Max's gaze landed on the poster announcing the legendary ghost train that departed every night without fail, its passengers never to be seen again. The rumors were wild. Some said it was a supernatural shuttle for souls who hadn't quite made peace with their earthly regrets. Others claimed it was simply a ploy by the railway company to drum up business. He grinned. "Just my luck. I'm about to board the most haunted train in America, and I'm doing it for clicks." As if the universe had heard his thoughts, the train pulled up with a dramatic puff of steam, its carriages glinting in the moonlight like a shiny black pearl. Max's heart raced. This was it. He was going to prove to everyone, especially himself, that he wasn't afraid of the unknown. He would document every quirky detail, every absurd moment, and then, of course, post it all online for the world to see. That he stepped up to the open door, bracing himself for whatever lay ahead. Inside, the train was unexpectedly lavish: velvet seats, intricate chandeliers, and walls lined with what could only be described as the world's most ostentatious wallpaper. There was something oddly inviting about it. Despite the stories, Max took a deep breath, pulled out his trusty camera, and snapped a few photos. "This is going to be gold," he said to himself, a confident grin plastered across his face. He plopped down in an empty seat, glancing around to see if anyone else had boarded. That's when he met Edgar. A ghostly figure appeared across the aisle, looking perfectly at ease, dressed in what seemed to be a vintage three-piece suit, complete with a bowler hat. Max blinked. Am I seeing things, or are you, Edgar? Pleased to meet you," the ghost interrupted, extending a translucent hand. "Welcome aboard the ghost train. You'll find it quite an enlightening experience." Max's mouth hung open for a moment before he shook Edgar's hand, which felt like a gentle breeze. "Right. Okay. So, you're a ghost?" "Indeed. And quite the jolly one, I must say," Edgar replied, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "But don't fret. I'm here to help you navigate the afterlife, so to speak." Max chuckled nervously. "I think I'm just here for a thrill, but okay." He felt a mix of excitement and dread. This could either be the best story he'd ever told or the last one he'd ever lived to tell. As the train chugged along, other ghostly passengers began to appear, each with a comically tragic backstory. There was Bessie, who had drowned while trying to save her pet goldfish during a freak storm, and Gerald, a man who had accidentally locked himself in a porta-potty during a music festival and perished from embarrassment. Max couldn't help but laugh at their absurd tales, jotting down notes furiously. "So, what's the deal with this train?" he asked Edgar between chuckles. That's the fun part. "Each of us is here for a reason," Edgar explained, his ghostly visage glowing slightly. "This train serves as a sort of limbo, a place where souls confront their unfinished business before they can move on." Max raised an eyebrow. "And how do we do that?" By facing our fears, of course. Edgar said, an enthusiastic grin on his spectral face. Fear of public speaking, unresolved love, the odd regret about forgetting a birthday card, everyone has something. Just then, the train jolted violently, and the lights flickered ominously. Max's heart raced. What was that? That's just the conductor reminding us to stay focused. Edgar replied with a wink. He can be a bit touchy when it comes to unfinished business. Right, Max said, trying to steady his breathing. So, do I just confront my fears too? What if my biggest fear is being stuck on a haunted train? Edgar chuckled. Well, that's one way to start. But first, let's help Bessie with her goldfish situation. Max rolled his eyes but couldn't help but feel a strange sense of camaraderie with the other ghosts. This was turning out to be the weirdest, most amusing night of his life. As they helped Bessie confront her aquatic fears, turns out her fish had been named Captain Fluffy Pants and needed a proper burial in the ocean. Max realized that the atmosphere had shifted from eerie to oddly uplifting. Laughter echoed through the train as they told stories, shared ghostly anecdotes, and grew more comfortable with each other. But then, as the train sped along the tracks, Max felt a wave of unease wash over him. The conductor appeared, a tall, shadowy figure with an air of authority that sent shivers down Max's spine. He looked like he'd stepped straight out of a horror flick, complete with a mustache that curled ominously. Listen up, folks, the conductor boomed, his voice echoing through the train. We're approaching a pivotal moment. It's time to confront your fears or remain trapped in this spectral limbo. Max's pulse quickened. Is there a way to opt out of the confronting part? He muttered under his breath. Too late for that, my boy, the conductor declared, pointing a skeletal finger at Max. You, in particular, have some unfinished business to resolve. Max's stomach dropped. How could this be happening? What kind of business? He stammered. The kind that requires you to take a good, hard look at yourself, the conductor responded, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Are you ready for the journey? With a mix of dread and determination, Max nodded. This was his chance, not just for a good story, but perhaps for some personal growth. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a hilariously chaotic night. Max took a deep breath, steeling himself against the conductor's intense gaze. The air in the train thickened, charged with the weight of expectation. He could feel the other ghostly passengers watching him, their ethereal forms shifting slightly, eager for the spectacle to unfold. All right, what's my unfinished business? He asked, trying to sound braver than he felt. The conductor grinned, revealing a row of teeth that looked like they were carved from ivory. Fear of commitment, my boy. You dance around it like a frightened cat around a cucumber. And now, you must confront it. Commitment? Max echoed, incredulity flooding his voice. You mean like, relationships? I'm just here for a good time, not a long time. Precisely, the conductor said with a dramatic flourish. But tell me, what is the good of a thrill if you never allow anyone to share in it? Max opened his mouth to protest but found no words. He had always prided himself on his freedom, his ability to pick up and go wherever his whims took him. Commitment felt like a ball and chain, and the thought of being tied down sent a cold shiver down his spine. Let's see just how committed you are to your adventures, the conductor said, gesturing dramatically toward the front of the train. The flickering lights dimmed further, creating an atmosphere that felt almost cinematic. Suddenly, the train shuddered again, and the scenery outside transformed. Gone were the midnight shadows of the station. Instead, they sped through a surreal landscape, a carnival of memories that only Max could see. Bright lights flashed past, and he caught glimpses of moments he'd long buried, the girlfriend he'd ghosted because he couldn't handle the idea of a future, the job he'd quit at the last minute because it felt too safe. "Welcome to your past," the conductor announced with a flourish. "It's time to face the choices you've made." Max couldn't believe what he was seeing. The images flickered like an old projector: his college graduation, where he'd vowed never to settle down, the time he'd turned down a promotion because it would have meant settling in one place, the heartfelt conversations he'd shied away from, dodging vulnerability like a pro. "Just a bunch of old news," Max said, but he felt a tug in his chest. "I mean, what's the big deal?" "Oh, but it is a big deal," Edgar chimed in, floating closer. "These moments shape who you are. The adventure is not just about where you go, but with whom you share the journey." Max ran a hand through his hair, the weight of realization settling in. He'd filled his life with fleeting thrills, but in doing so, he had missed out on the richness of connection. "I've just been playing it safe," he muttered, half to himself. "That's right," the conductor boomed, "and it's time to take a leap of faith." The train lurched again, and suddenly, Max found himself standing in a familiar cafe, one he used to visit with Sarah, a girl who had loved him deeply. The smell of coffee and pastries wafted through the air, transporting him back to lazy afternoons spent talking about dreams and futures. "Sarah," he called out, but his voice echoed through the empty space. Memories washed over him, reminding him of the day he'd walked away, too terrified to commit. "Why did you leave?" A voice came from behind him, soft and haunting. He turned to see Sarah, a shimmering figure, her face a blend of warmth and sadness. "You had everything you wanted, Max. Why didn't you fight for it?" His heart sank. "I was scared. I didn't want to be trapped in something I couldn't control," he confessed, feeling the weight of her gaze pierce through him. "I didn't know how to be what you needed." "You were what I needed," she replied, her voice a bittersweet melody. "You just didn't believe it." In that moment, Max felt something shift within him. The carnival of memories around him faded, replaced by the warmth of their shared laughter and the dreams they had spun together. I didn't realize how much I wanted that," he stammered, his throat tightening. "I thought adventure meant being alone." "Adventure is richer with someone by your side," Sarah said, her form shimmering like a mirage. "You can have both, Max. You just have to take a chance." Tears pricked at his eyes as he reached out, but she dissolved into the ether, leaving him alone in the cafe with a lingering sense of loss. "No," he shouted, frustration boiling over. "I can't just let you go again." "Then don't," Edgar said gently, appearing beside him. "It's never too late to fight for what matters. The ghosts are here to help you find your way back, but you must be willing to commit to that path." As if summoned, the train lurched again, and Max was swept back into his seat, panting. The conductor stood before him, eyes twinkling with knowing mischief. "Well? Ready to make a commitment to your future?" Max looked around at the ghosts surrounding him, their expressions hopeful and supportive. He could feel the weight of their collective anticipation. "What do I do?" he asked, suddenly feeling small. "Speak your truth," the conductor boomed. "Take a leap of faith into the unknown." "Okay," Max said, heart racing. I want to embrace adventure, but I also want to let people in. I want to connect. I don't want to run anymore." The words tumbled out, fueled by urgency and sincerity. As he spoke, the train began to vibrate with energy. Lights flickered wildly, and the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Max could feel the ghosts rallying around him, their presence solidifying his resolve. The conductor clapped his hands, the sound echoing like thunder. Then let's see if you mean it. In an instant, the train transformed again. This time, they were in a bright, sunlit park, laughter ringing out from children playing nearby. Max blinked in disbelief. He spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench, his old friend Lucas, who had always encouraged him to take chances. "Max. There you are," Lucas called, waving enthusiastically. He was alive again, a bright smile on his face. "I've been waiting for you." "Lucas?" Max gasped, unable to comprehend what was happening. "How is this possible?" "Anything is possible when you're willing to face your fears," Lucas replied, standing and approaching Max. "You've been too afraid to embrace the connections that matter. But look around. This is where your journey leads: friends, laughter, love. You have to take the leap." Max felt a surge of hope. "But how? I've messed up so many times." "By showing up," Lucas said firmly. "Start with the people who matter most to you. They're waiting for you to step back into their lives." Suddenly, Max felt the presence of the other ghosts around him again. Each one represented a piece of his journey, the lessons learned, the mistakes made, and the growth that had come from them. "You're not alone in this," Edgar reassured him. Max took a deep breath, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I want to reconnect," he declared, louder this time, filled with determination. "I want to make things right. I'm ready to embrace the adventure of life, and all the messy, beautiful connections that come with it." With that proclamation, a bright light enveloped him. The train began to rumble as if shaking off the chains of the past. The ghosts cheered, their voices mingling with the sound of laughter from the park. Max could feel a transformation happening, not just in the train, but within himself. He opened his eyes to find the train car filling with light, the shadows retreating as the weight of fear lifted. "Congratulations," the conductor said, a broad smile on his face. "You've chosen your path." As the train slowed to a halt, Max realized they had returned to the station, but it was different now, alive with color and vibrancy. The sun was just rising, casting golden rays through the fog. The world seemed brighter, more inviting. Max stepped off the train, the cool morning air invigorating his spirit. He turned back to the conductor and Edgar, gratitude swelling in his chest. "Thank you for this." The conductor tipped his hat, his expression warm. "Just remember, every adventure begins with a commitment. Go make your life the adventure you desire." As he walked away, Max felt a lightness in his heart. He had faced his fears, and in doing so, discovered the beauty of connection. With a renewed sense of purpose, he pulled out his phone, ready to share his experience with the world. This time, he wouldn't just capture the thrill, he would embrace the depth of human experience. And as he stepped into the daylight, he couldn't help but chuckle, thinking of all the absurdity he'd encountered. "Who knew a ghost train could teach me so much?" he mused, a smile creeping onto his face. He had a story to tell, one filled with laughter, heart, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And in that moment, Max realized that life, like the ghost train, was an adventure best shared with others.